Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. So, during the last budget negotiation, the Democratic Party, at least they said, they were going to stand by the Dreamers, essentially the kids who were allowed to stay into the country because they were brought into the country illegally by their parents, but they were brought in through no fault of their own. For all intents and purposes, these kids grew up, worked, and are as American as apple pie. This is a country that they know. This is the only country that for the most part they know. And the Trump administration has ended that deferred action plan that allowed these kids to stay into the country. Now, Donald Trump has given, I think, like a window of a year, I think maybe less than a year, in order for Congress to work out some level of agreement that makes this process legal. So that's the backdrop. Now, the key point to this is the Obama administration, the president of the United States, the last president of the United States, who put this plan into place, had the presidential authority, the constitutional authority to make these kids legal on his own. He could say, look, I am waving my presidential wand, and this is no longer legal, meaning you guys are no longer in the country legal. You guys have a pardon. Go forth and enjoy your lives. He didn't do that. Democrats, for the longest time, have used the Hispanic vote as a political football, meaning in this DACA thing, they full well understood that they will be incentivized to vote Democrat in order to keep their relatives and friends in the country itself. Now, when I say that, I don't necessarily mean that each and every Hispanic is in this country legally. I don't mean that at all. What I mean is the 800,000 people that are here from the DACA program, or that were shielded and protected through DACA, they have family, they have friends, they have communities that they belong to, and in no way do those communities want these people ripped out the country. So yeah, these people are going to be somewhat incentivized in order to vote for the party that they believe is going to keep them into the country. They're being used as a political football by Democrats. If this was something that Democrats actually cared about and actually, got to the heart of them, like, oh, we care about this so much. We scream about identity to the exclusion of class, because issues of class deal with our donors, and we don't want to have a conversation about our donors, so we're going to stick with identity. But despite screaming with identity at the top of their lungs and every mic that they can find, despite pledging their support for DACA recipients, at the end of the day, when it came down to brass tacks, they folded. They folded. They didn't include the DACA recipients in the negotiations for the budget. The DACA negotiation is going to be separate and distinct from that. They didn't go to the mat. Now, part of the reason they didn't go down to the mat and they didn't push this idea of a government shutdown unless Donald Trump puts the negotiation or puts DACA recipients into the budget. They didn't go to the mat because in their mind, in their calculus, they have a very good chance of winning the House and the Senate in 2018. Because they feel that they have a decent chance of winning the House and the Senate in 2018, they don't want to take any risky political behavior that may rock the boat. Meaning it is unpredictable how the public will regard the Democratic Party shutting down the government over this particular item or this particular issue. The uncertain. The problem with this is you scream identity to the exclusion of everything else. I don't like the fact that they scream identity to the exclusion of everything else. I think the issue that needs to be discussed is class. But you can understand that if you're going to scream and you're going to focus on identity to this degree, and then an issue comes up, a very specific issue comes up that deals specifically with one of the identities that you scream about, it looks like the natural political course of that, regardless of anything else that's taken place or the other political realities, is that you would go to the mat for the identity that you consistently con into voting for you. But they didn't do that. They didn't do that. When it came time for them to have a spine and say, God damn it, we're going to represent these people. We don't want these kids kicked out the country. They didn't do that. They folded on that issue. In folding on that issue, you now have political consequences. One of those political consequences is that if the Democratic Party wants DACA recipients to stay into the country, there will be a political price extracted from them getting that particular vote. What I mean by that is this article in Newsweek. Trump is using DACA recipients as a bargaining chip for border wall funding. In the same way that Democrats have used Hispanic population as a political football, either from the standpoint of you're either going to vote for us because the people who are coming in that office are going to kick you guys out the country and are going to be more prosecutorial in regards to these ICE raids, or we're going to use this as a club, meaning when the other people get into power, we're going to use this issue to beat you over the head, saying these horrible, disgusting people are trying to kick out these American kids who were brought into the country illegally. It works in both ways. I can use it as a club, or I can use it as an incentive to get you to vote for my particular party. The point is, in either way that you use it, both ways have been used as a political football. If Obama administration really wanted to do something with this issue, if this issue really dug down deep into the Democratic Party, then they would have did something about this issue before it went into the Trump administration. But they didn't. They didn't. They didn't even have the balls to go to the point of saying, we're not going to allow you to pass this budget unless you allow these kids to stay into the country. Didn't even have the balls to do that. Didn't even have the balls to do that. So in the same way that they were using it as political football, now Republicans have started to use it as a political football. Let's take a look at this story. I'm going to make a prediction. The Democratic Party is going to build Donald Trump's funding wall. Because unless the Democratic Party build Donald Trump's stupid-ass funding wall, that big, beautiful wall, the DACA recipients are not going to stay into the country. Democrats care about the DACA recipients. Republicans do not. I don't necessarily think they want the flack of having these kids being kicked out the country and being associated with that, seeing as most of the public in this country don't want that to take place. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to brass tacks, the group that cares to some degree about the recipients are Democrats. So if Democrats want these DACA recipients to stay into the country, when the Republican Party don't really care about the DACA recipients, Republicans are going to extract a price. The question becomes, what is that price going to be? And I suspect that price, at least going by this particular article, is going to be to build that big, beautiful wall. You are going to fill Donald Trump's campaign promise. President Donald Trump has signaled he plans to use the country's nearly 800,000 so-called dreamers as a bargaining chip in his effort to build his long-promised big, beautiful wall along the United States-Mexican border. Following a meeting with Senate Republicans on Thursday to discuss a potential fix for an Obama-era policy that shielded the dreamers, working adults who were brought to the country illegally as children from deportation, Trump says he believes a deal to help them is possible if funding for the wall and for beefed-up border security is included. Hopefully everything is going to work out well. We really want to work it out, Trump told reporters at the White House on Thursday. I can tell you Republicans want to see it worked out very well. If we have support from Democrats, I think DACA is going to be terrific, he added, referring to the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program. We need protection, we need the wall, we need all those things, and frankly, I think a lot of Democrats agree with us when we see what's happening, Trump said. When they see the kind of problems we're having at the border, they really understand it. Whether they'll vote that way is another situation, but they'll really understand it. I gotta be honest, it doesn't really matter what Donald Trump says here. Ultimately, what this boils down to is, you've passed my budget, thank you very much. If you want these DACA recipients to stay into the country, you're gonna help me fulfill my campaign promise and build that big, beautiful, dumbass wall. You can say whatever you want about Donald Trump. It is good politics to extract concessions when your opponent wants something that you don't particularly care about. And in this case, that's exactly what's going to take place. So, good job, Democrats, being feckless and weak. Good job not representing the interests that you're supposed to represent by standing up for that particular identity, seeing as you continuously try to con that particular identity to vote for your party. Yeah, good job. You're going to build this wall. Good job. This is a prediction, but we'll see. Here's the other part. The president's statement Thursday reiterated a tweet he sent last week threatening Democrats that there will be no fix for DACA without the funding wall. The Democrats have been told and fully understand there can be no DACA without a desperately needed wall at the southern border and the end to the horrible chain migration and ridiculous lottery system of immigration, etc. We must protect our country at all costs, tweeted on December 29th. Democrats have signaled they could support a DACA deal that contains more funding for a border wall, but they've shown no inclination to fund Trump's proposed wall. Oh. Whether they show an inclination or not is kind of besides the point. If Donald Trump says There is no deal for DACA unless you fund that wall. What I would imagine is Democrats are going to line up and they're going to fund that wall. You're not going to have these 800,000 kids kicked out the country, which is kind of the problem. And if I'm not mistaken, I've mentioned this problem before. You've lost any bargaining chip that you've had. Ultimately, you want something that the president and Republicans don't care about. They're going to extract a price. That price is going to be you building their big, beautiful border wall. That's amazing. So yes, there is going to be funding for it. Let's see. Instead of constructive talks, Trump and Democrats' leadership have engaged in a public war of words over a potential DACA fix and funding for the border wall, and the status of nearly 800,000 DACA recipients is hanging in the balance. Trump has lashed out at the opposition and at Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, in particular, saying they were not working to protect the young immigrants. Democrats are doing nothing for DACA, just interested in politics. Yes, it's true. DACA activists and Hispanics will go hard against Democrats, will start falling in love with Republicans and their president. We're about results, Trump tweeted July 2nd. I suspect that's a bullshit tweet. That being said, Hispanics understand that Obama deported 3 million of them. 3 million. Broke records. They're not going to start loving Republicans because Republicans have a certain bend against them. But he's not necessarily wrong in kind of making this point that they're over a barrel. We don't care about the DACA recipients. Either you fund this border wall or these kids are going to be kicked out of the country. It is that simple. Now, what do you think the Democratic Party is going to do in this situation? Do you honestly believe that they're going to let 800,000 kids get kicked out of the country? Or do you believe they're going to put money into supporting Donald Trump's border wall? I strongly suspect whatever Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi says, at the end of the day, they're going to fall in line and they're going to build that big, beautiful, dumb-ass border wall with Mexico. So, I could be wrong. I'm doubtful that I'm wrong. Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi can say whatever they want. At the end of the day, you have 800,000 kids who are lives in the balance. And personally, I don't care if you get funding to a border wall to keep those kids into the country. It's kind of besides the point, though. The opportunity that you've had to actually fix this was in a previous administration, was after the election, when the election was lost, when Obama could have just made these kids American citizens. Or at the very least, got rid of the legal consequences associated with it. And the deal, the budget deal. You didn't want to go to the mat for it. And now you're laying face down on the mat. And Donald Trump is going to have his way with you. So, get ready for this throbbing that's going to take place. They're going to fund this wall. I will be shocked as shit if they don't fund this wall. Democrats are like, they're going to fund this wall. That's my prediction. I could be completely wrong on this. I don't see any leverage that they have at all on this, other than the Republicans themselves probably don't want the DACA recipients kicked out of the country. But I would guarantee you this, between the two parties, the only party that has any inclination to do anything about this is Democrats. Because Democrats are the only party that has an inclination to do anything about it, anything that comes is going to come at a price. The question becomes, what is that price? Donald Trump has made the point that that price is going to be beefing up the border wall and paying for the border wall. We'll see what takes place. I will leave it at that. Look, if you're gonna use identity to this degree, then stand by it. Stand by it. If you're going to say we care about X, then you should stand by X. If you want Hispanics to vote for you in the way that you try to con them to get them to vote for you, then you should stand by them in times of need. Going to bat in the budget negotiation was a time of need that you should have stood by them. Now you're stuck in a situation where one party cares for something and another party doesn't give two shits about. And the question becomes, what are they going to extract from you in order to get you, or to allow your vote to pass in order to protect these DACA recipients? And I strongly suspect that at the end of the day, whatever Trump wants on this, particularly in regards to the border wall, you're not going to have a choice but to give him. You've given up your bargaining chips. Good job. Good job. And look, there's a reason for this, by the way. This is not purely fecklessness. Ultimately, if you're looking at this from a raw political calculus that doesn't take into account that human beings are at stake, Democrats look at this and say, hey, we have a really good chance of taking the House and the Senate in 2018, so we don't do anything to fuck that up. That's where it comes from. They're not willing to go to bat. They weren't willing to go to bat because they didn't want to do anything that would screw up their chances for taking the House and the Senate in 2018. So you can make an argument that just giving Trump the money for that border wall, even if it's one of those things where he gets his particular campaign promise, it's not a bad strategy if it keeps these kids into the country. From a political standpoint, it's unappetizing, yes. But from an actual standpoint of, well, wait a minute, we want these kids to stay into the country. We don't want to do anything to kick these kids out of the country. And ultimately, giving money to a dumbass border wall, who cares? The kids are more important. So that's my thinking on it. We'll see what happens, though. I'll keep an eye on this particular story. Thanks, guys.